The sun beat down on the small town of Harmony Gulch, baking the dusty streets. Families had traveled from far away, lured by the promise of fertile land and a fresh start. They built their homes with their own hands, dreaming of fields of wheat and happy children playing under the wide-open sky. Sarah, a young woman with bright eyes and a spirit as strong as the prairie wind, was one of these hopeful settlers. She and her husband, Thomas, had arrived just months ago, full of optimism. They had already started building their little house, a symbol of their commitment to this new life. Thomas worked tirelessly on the farm, while Sarah tended to their small garden, coaxing life from the dry soil. Evenings were spent sharing stories and laughter with their neighbors, building a community based on shared dreams and mutual support. They held barn dances under the stars, celebrated small victories, and helped each other through hardships. Harmony Gulch was more than just a town. It was a family bound together by hope and hard work. Little did they know, the peace they cherished was about to be shattered. The whispers of Apache warriors in the nearby hills were growing louder, a dark cloud on their horizon. The peaceful rhythm of Harmony Gulch was about to be violently disrupted. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the valley, the settlers heard a sound that sent shivers down their spines, the chilling war cry of the Apache. It started as a distant echo, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. Then it grew louder, closer, until it was a deafening roar that filled the air. Horses galloped into the town square, ridden by fierce warriors, their faces painted with war paint, their eyes blazing with fury. Panic erupted. Women screamed, children cried, and men scrambled for their rifles. The attack was swift and brutal. Arrows rained down, piercing the air. Buildings were set ablaze, sending plumes of black smoke billowing into the sky. The settlers, caught off guard, fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The air filled with the smell of smoke and fear. The dreams they had so carefully nurtured were turning to ash before their very eyes. The hope that had once burned so brightly in Harmony Gulch was now being extinguished by the flames of war. Amidst the raging inferno and the clash of weapons, Sarah found herself separated from Thomas. The last she saw of him, he was bravely defending their home, firing his rifle at the advancing warriors. Now, she was alone, caught in the swirling chaos of the raid. A strong hand seized her arm, pulling her roughly away from the burning building. She looked up into the face of an Apache warrior, his eyes cold and unyielding. He was tall and muscular, with a stern expression etched on his face. Fear surged through Sarah as she realized her fate. She struggled against his grip, but it was no use. He was too strong. The warrior dragged her towards a group of horses, already laden with stolen goods and other captives. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Where was Thomas? Was he safe? Tears streamed down her face as she was hoisted onto a horse, her hands bound tightly behind her back. She looked back at the burning town, a scene of utter devastation. Harmony Gulch, once a symbol of hope and promise, was now a smoldering ruin. Her future was uncertain, filled with fear and despair. She was now a captive, at the mercy of the Apache. The warrior who had captured Sarah was named Kawa, a leader among his people. He observed her with a detached curiosity, his dark eyes assessing her value. To him, she was a prize, spoils of war, taken during a successful raid. He saw her fear, the raw terror in her eyes, but he did not see her as a person, not yet. He knew little of the settlers, their ways, or their dreams. He only knew that they were encroaching on Apache land, disrupting the balance of nature and threatening his people's way of life. The raid was a necessary act of defense, a way to protect their ancestral lands. Yet, something about Sarah intrigued him. Beneath the dirt and the fear, he saw a flicker of strength, a spark of defiance. He noticed the way she held her head high, even with her hands bound. He recognized the pain in her eyes, the longing for something lost. Kawa knew that his tribe would expect him to treat her as a slave, to use her for labor, and to break her spirit. But he hesitated. He sensed that there was more to this woman than met the eye, something that made her different from the other settlers he had encountered. He decided to observe her more closely, to understand her before deciding her fate. After days of hard riding, the Apache raiding party reached their camp, nestled deep within a hidden canyon. Sarah, exhausted and bruised, was led into the heart of the village. The camp was a flurry of activity, with women tending to fires, children playing, and warriors sharpening their weapons. The air was filled with the scent of wood smoke, roasting meat, and unfamiliar herbs. The other members of the tribe stared at Sarah with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Some glared at her, seeing her as an enemy, while others whispered amongst themselves, wondering what Kawa intended to do with her. She felt like an animal on display, every move scrutinized, every breath analyzed. Kawa led her to a simple dwelling, a small teepee made of animal hides. He gestured for her to enter. Inside, the space was sparsely furnished with a few blankets and a cooking pot. It was a far cry from the cozy home she had shared with Thomas, but it was shelter, at least. Kawa spoke to her in Apache, a language she did not understand. He pointed to the blankets, indicating that she should rest. Then, without another word, he turned and left, leaving Sarah alone in the strange and unfamiliar world of the Apache. Fear mixed with exhaustion as she sank to the ground, wondering what the future held. The days that followed were a blur of unfamiliar sights, sounds, and customs. Sarah struggled to understand the Apache way of life. Everything was different. The food they ate, the clothes they wore, the way they spoke, and the way they interacted with each other. The Apache women went about their daily tasks with a quiet efficiency, gathering firewood, preparing meals, and tending to the children. They were strong and resourceful, skilled in the art of survival. Sarah watched them, tried to learn, but she felt clumsy and out of place. Communication was a major obstacle. She didn't understand their language, and they didn't understand hers. Gestures and expressions were her only means of conveying her needs and intentions. She tried to ask about Thomas, but her efforts were met with blank stares or shrugs. The uncertainty of his fate weighed heavily on her heart. The food was another challenge. Accustomed to simple meals of bread and vegetables, Sarah found the Apache diet of dried meat and unfamiliar roots difficult to stomach. She missed the taste of fresh milk and the comfort of a warm loaf of bread. Despite these hardships, Sarah was determined to survive. She knew that if she wanted to have any chance of returning to her old life, she had to adapt to her new surroundings. She had to learn to live like an Apache. Many in the tribe viewed Sarah with open hostility. They saw her as a symbol of the settlers who threatened their land and their way of life. Some of the warriors would glare at her as she walked by, muttering insults in Apache. Even the children would sometimes throw stones at her teepee. One day, while she was gathering firewood, a group of women surrounded her, their faces contorted with anger. They began shouting at her, pushing her, and shoving her. Sarah, terrified, stumbled backward, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Kawa appeared, his presence instantly silencing the women. He spoke to them in a stern voice, his words carrying an undeniable authority. The women lowered their heads and dispersed, leaving Sarah trembling but unharmed. From that moment on, it was clear that Kawa was protecting her. He made sure she had enough food and water, and he assigned a young girl named Tala to help her learn the Apache language and customs. While Sarah was still a captive, she was no longer completely alone. She had the protection of Kawa, a powerful warrior who, for reasons she couldn't understand, seemed determined to keep her safe. Tala began teaching Sarah simple words like water, food, and friend. It was a small start, but it was a start nonetheless. As Sarah spent more time in the Apache camp, she began to observe their way of life with a new perspective. She noticed their deep respect for nature. They took only what they needed from the land, never wasting anything. They hunted animals with reverence, thanking them for providing sustenance. They understood the cycles of the seasons and lived in harmony with the natural world. She also saw the strength of their family bonds. Children were cherished and loved, and elders were respected for their wisdom and experience. Families worked together, supporting each other through good times and bad. She yearned for news of her own family and wondered if they were safe. Sarah witnessed their spiritual beliefs in everyday life. They believed in a great spirit that connected all living things. They offered prayers to the sun, the moon, and the stars. They performed rituals to honor the spirits of their ancestors and to seek guidance in times of trouble. She watched as Kawa participated in these ceremonies, his face etched with deep reverence. Although she didn't fully understand their beliefs, she could feel the power and the sincerity of their faith. She began to see that the Apache were not simply savage warriors, as she had once believed. They were a people with a rich culture, a deep connection to nature, and a strong sense of community. As Sarah showed a willingness to learn and adapt, Kawa began to treat her with a newfound respect. He saw that she was not simply a weak and helpless settler woman, but a strong and resilient individual. He started to spend more time with her, sharing stories of his people and their traditions. He taught her how to track animals, how to find water in the desert, and how to build a fire without matches. He showed her which plants were safe to eat and which were poisonous. He explained the importance of respecting the land and the animals that lived on it. He even taught her how to use a bow and arrow. At first, she was clumsy and awkward, but with his patient guidance, she gradually improved. She learned to shoot with accuracy and precision. She discovered a hidden talent for hunting, a skill she never knew she possessed. Through these lessons, Sarah began to understand the Apache way of life on a deeper level. She saw their wisdom, their courage, and their deep connection to the natural world. She also began to see Kawa in a new light. He was not just a fierce warrior, but a wise and compassionate leader, deeply committed to protecting his people and their traditions. He started calling her by a new name, Sun Woman, because of her bright spirit. With Tala's help, Sarah, now increasingly known as Sun Woman, diligently learned the Apache language. Each new word opened a door to a deeper understanding of their culture and their way of thinking. She began to grasp their reverence for the land, their respect for their elders, and their fierce loyalty to their tribe. She learned that the Apache valued courage, honesty, and self-reliance. They believed in living in harmony with nature, taking only what they needed and giving back to the earth. They honored their ancestors and sought guidance from spirits. As her language skills improved, Sarah was able to have more meaningful conversations with Kawa and the other members of the tribe. She learned about their history, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. She began to understand why they were so fiercely protective of their land and why they viewed the settlers as a threat. She realized that the conflict between the Apache and the settlers was not simply a matter of good versus evil, but a clash of two different cultures with different values and different ways of life. She started to see the world through their eyes, and her perspective began to shift. While she still longed for her old life, she could no longer view the Apache as simply savage enemies. They were people with their own hopes, dreams, and fears, just like her. She began to understand why Kawa fought so hard for his people. As the weeks turned into months, a quiet and unexpected bond began to form between Sun Woman and Kawa. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of their lives, their families, and their dreams. Sun Woman told Kawa about Harmony Gulch, the settlers' hopes for a new life, and her love for Thomas. She described the simple pleasures of their life, the smell of freshly baked bread, the sound of children laughing, and the warmth of their community. Kawa, in turn, shared stories of his childhood, his training as a warrior, and his responsibilities as a leader. He spoke of his love for his people, his respect for the land, and his determination to protect their way of life. He explained the Apache perspective on the settlers, their fears of losing their land, and their anger at the destruction of their sacred places. They learned from each other, challenged each other's beliefs, and discovered common ground despite their different backgrounds. Sun Woman saw beyond Kawa's stoic exterior and recognized his kindness, his wisdom, and his deep sense of responsibility. Kawa saw beyond Sun Woman's settler upbringing and recognized her strength, her resilience, and her open mind. He told her the story of how he got his name, Kawa, which means coffee in Spanish. His father had traded with some Mexicans and loved the taste of coffee, so much he named his son after it. He smiled when he told her that, a rare sight. Their conversations often stretched late into the night, under the watchful gaze of the moon and the stars. They found solace in each other's company, a connection that transcended the boundaries of culture and conflict. This bond became the seed of something deeper, something neither of them could have foreseen. Sun Woman witnessed firsthand Kawa's unwavering commitment to his people during a tense confrontation with a group of horse traders. The traders had cheated the Apache, offering them inferior goods in exchange for valuable furs. Kawa, upon discovering the deceit, confronted the traders with a quiet fury. He didn't resort to violence, but his words were sharp and his presence commanding. He demanded that the traders return what they had stolen and apologize to his people. The traders, initially defiant, quickly backed down in the face of Kawa's unwavering resolve. Sun Woman saw the respect that the Apache warriors had for Kawa. She noticed the way they looked at him. It was something she admired. He secured a fair trade for his people, demonstrating his bravery and his unwavering dedication to their well-being. On another occasion, a band of outlaws attempted to steal horses from the Apache camp. Kawa led the defense, fighting with skill and courage. He put himself in harm's way to protect his people, inspiring them to fight bravely alongside him. Sun Woman watched in awe as he moved with grace and power, defending his home and his family. These experiences solidified Sun Woman's respect for Kawa. She saw that he was not just a leader, but a protector, a warrior, and a man of unwavering principle. He was willing to risk his life to defend his people from any threat, and she admired his courage and his selflessness. She realized that his strength came not from violence, but from his deep love for his people and his unwavering commitment to their way of life. Sun Woman found herself increasingly questioning the values she had once held so dear. The settlers valued progress, material possessions, and the taming of the land. They believed in building fences, claiming ownership, and exploiting the earth's resources. They strived for comfort and security, often at the expense of others. The Apache, on the other hand, valued community, respect for nature, and spiritual connection. They believed in living in harmony with the earth, taking only what they needed and sharing what they had. They embraced hardship and resilience, finding strength in their traditions and their relationships with each other. Sun Woman began to see a different kind of strength in the Apache way of life. She saw their ability to endure hardship, their unwavering loyalty to their tribe, and their deep respect for the natural world. She realized that true strength came not from material possessions or technological advancements, but from inner resilience, strong relationships, and a deep connection to something larger than oneself. She started to wonder if the settlers' pursuit of progress had come at too high a cost. Had they lost something essential in their quest for comfort and security? Had they forgotten the importance of community, respect for nature, and spiritual connection? She thought about Thomas and wondered if he was alive. She missed him terribly, but she also felt a growing sense of conflict within herself. She was no longer sure what she wanted or where she belonged. The old certainties were gone, replaced by a confusing mix of longing, guilt, and a growing sense of admiration for the Apache way of life. The peaceful rhythm of the Apache camp was shattered once again, this time by the war cries of a rival tribe, the Comanches. The attack was sudden and fierce, born from a long-standing feud over hunting grounds. Warriors on horseback charged into the camp, brandishing spears and bows. Panic erupted as the Apache scrambled to defend their homes and families. Sun Woman, remembering the terror of the raid on Harmony Gulch, instinctively sought shelter. But then she saw Tala, frozen with fear, and Kawa, rallying the warriors. She knew she couldn't hide. Drawing upon the skills Kawa had taught her, Sun Woman grabbed a bow and arrow and joined the defense. She positioned herself behind a rock, taking aim at the attacking Comanches. Her hands trembled at first, but she focused on her target, remembering Kawa's patient instructions. She loosed her first arrow, and it struck a Comanche warrior, forcing him to retreat. Emboldened, she continued to fire, helping to repel the attackers. She ran to help Tala, pulling her into the shelter of her teepee. Together, they helped the other women and children. She used the survival skills that Kawa had taught her to help those who were injured. She felt a surge of adrenaline and a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since the attack on Harmony Gulch. She was no longer just a captive. She was a defender, fighting alongside the Apache to protect their home. The battle raged on, but the Apache, inspired by Kawa's leadership and Sun Woman's unexpected bravery, fought with unwavering determination. During the heat of the battle, Kawa was struck by a Comanche spear. He staggered, clutching his side, but continued to fight, his face grim with pain. After the Comanches were finally driven off, Sun Woman rushed to his side. His wound was deep and bleeding badly. With the help of Tala and the other women, she carefully cleaned the wound and applied a poultice made of herbs she had learned about from Kawa. She worked tirelessly, day and night, tending to his needs. She kept him hydrated, changed his bandages, and soothed his fevered brow. Kawa was a stoic patient, rarely complaining, but Sun Woman could see the pain in his eyes. She spoke to him softly, telling him stories of her childhood and of Harmony Gulch. She sang him songs she remembered from her youth, her voice filled with love and concern. As she nursed him back to health, their bond deepened. She saw his vulnerability, his humanity, and his unwavering strength. He, in turn, saw her compassion, her skill, and her unwavering dedication. He felt grateful for her presence, her care, and her unexpected love. He realized that she was more than just a captive. She was a friend, a confidant, and someone he had come to deeply respect and admire. During his recovery, they spent hours talking, sharing their thoughts and feelings. She asked him about his dreams and his fears, and he listened intently to her stories of the past. A love that neither of them could deny began to bloom. As Kawa recovered, Sun Woman could no longer deny the truth that had been growing in her heart. She had fallen in love with him. She admired his honor, his courage, his unwavering commitment to his people, and his unexpected kindness. She loved the way he looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a mixture of respect, admiration, and something else she couldn't quite define. She loved the way he spoke to her, his voice gentle and thoughtful, even when he was delivering difficult truths. She loved the way he treated her, not as a captive, but as a friend, a confidant, and an equal. She knew that loving Kawa was complicated, that it defied the boundaries of culture and conflict. He was an Apache warrior, she was a settler woman. He was her captor, she was his captive. Their worlds were different, their values were often at odds, and their future was uncertain. But none of that mattered. Her heart knew what it knew. She loved him with a fierce and unwavering passion. She felt guilty about Thomas. She didn't know if he was alive or dead. The thought of him made her sad, but she couldn't deny her feelings for Kawa. She thought back to Harmony Gulch, to her life with Thomas. It seemed so distant now, like a dream from another lifetime. She realized that she had changed, that she was no longer the same woman who had arrived in the Wild West with such high hopes. She was Sun Woman now, an Apache ally, and she was deeply and irrevocably in love with Kawa. She needed to tell him how she felt. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sun Woman found Kawa sitting by the fire. She took a deep breath and walked over to him, her heart pounding in her chest. She told him everything about her love for him, her admiration for his people, and her growing realization that she could no longer imagine a life apart from them. She spoke of her guilt about Thomas, but she also confessed that she had changed, that she was no longer the same woman who had left Harmony Gulch. Kawa listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took her hand in his and looked deeply into her eyes. He told her that he, too, had fallen in love with her, that he admired her strength, her compassion, and her unwavering spirit. He admitted that he had never expected to feel such a connection with a settler woman, but that fate had brought them together. He then spoke of the difficulties that lay ahead. He told her that choosing to stay with the Apache would mean embracing a life of hardship and uncertainty. She would face prejudice from both the settlers and some members of the tribe. She would have to give up her old life and fully embrace the Apache way of life. Sun Woman knew that Kawa was right, but her heart was made up. She told him that she was willing to face any challenge, to endure any hardship, as long as she could be with him and with his people. She chose to stay, to embrace her new life and her new identity as Sun Woman, an Apache ally and Kawa's love. Her choice was made. Months after the raid, Harmony Gulch had slowly begun to rebuild. The settlers, though scarred by the attack, were resilient. They had replanted their fields, rebuilt their homes, and tried to piece their lives back together. They never forgot those they had lost, especially Sarah. Thomas, though heartbroken, had never given up hope that Sarah was still alive. He organized a search party comprised of the bravest and most skilled men in the town, determined to find her and bring her home. They followed rumors and tracked signs, venturing deep into Apache territory, driven by a mixture of hope and desperation. One day, while Sun Woman was out hunting with Kawa, they spotted the search party approaching the Apache camp. Sun Woman's heart leaped in her throat. She recognized Thomas at the head of the group, his face etched with determination and grief. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. She was overjoyed to see Thomas alive, but she also knew that his arrival would complicate her life in ways she could barely imagine. She was torn between her love for Kawa and her loyalty to her former life. The search party's arrival created a profound conflict of loyalties within her. What was she going to do? She knew that her choice would have consequences for everyone involved. She had to protect the Apache from the settlers. She also wanted to see Thomas. Kawa and Sun Woman approached the search party, meeting them halfway between the camp and the open plains. Thomas's eyes widened as he saw Sarah, but his expression quickly turned to confusion and disbelief. She was dressed in Apache clothing, her face painted with tribal markings. She looked strong, confident, and completely different from the woman he remembered. "Sarah," he asked, his voice barely a whisper, "is that really you?" Sun Woman stepped forward, her gaze meeting Thomas's. "I am Sun Woman now," she said, her voice firm and clear. "I am with the Apache." Thomas's face crumpled with pain. "But why? What happened to you?" Sun Woman explained everything, telling him about her capture, her adaptation to the Apache way of life, her growing respect for their culture, and her love. He pleaded with her to come home, to return to her old life, to be the Sarah he remembered. Sun Woman stood firm, her heart aching for Thomas, but her resolve unwavering. She knew that she cannot go back. Her life was with Kawa and the Apache. She had to choose between her past and her present, between her old life and her newfound love and belonging. The decision was hers. She would not let anyone tell her what to do. She would make the right choice. She just hoped everyone would understand. Turning to the rest of the search party, Sun Woman spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "I know many of you are angry and confused," she said, her voice carrying across the open space. "You came here to rescue Sarah, the settler woman you knew. But Sarah is gone. I am Sun Woman now." She explained how she had come to understand and respect the Apache way of life, how she had found strength and purpose in their community, and how she had fallen in love with Kawa. "I'm not being held against my will," she insisted. "I am here because I choose to be. I have found a home among these people, a love I never expected to find." She pleaded with them to understand her decision. "I know it's not easy to accept," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "But I am asking you to respect my choice. I am happy here. I have found my place in this world." She spoke of her hope that one day, the settlers and the Apache could find a way to live together in peace, to respect each other's differences, and to learn from each other. She believed that it was possible, but it would require understanding, compassion, and a willingness to see the world through each other's eyes. "Please," she begged, "don't let my decision cause more bloodshed. Let me live my life in peace, and let the Apache live their lives in peace. She hoped they would understand. It was all she could ask for. Despite Sun Woman's heartfelt plea, some of the settlers refused to accept her decision. They saw her as a traitor, a woman who had abandoned her people and embraced the enemy. Anger flared in their eyes, their faces contorted with resentment. "You've been brainwashed," one of the settlers shouted. "They've turned you against us. You're a disgrace to Harmony Gulch," another yelled. "You've betrayed everything we stand for." Thomas tried to calm them down, but his words fell on deaf ears. The settlers, fueled by grief and anger, were determined to bring Sun Woman back, even if it meant resorting to violence. The Apache warriors, sensing the growing tension, stepped forward, their hands resting on their weapons. A tense standoff ensued, the air thick with hostility. The settlers and the Apache faced each other, each side ready to defend their own. Sun Woman stood between them, her heart aching with despair. She had hoped for understanding, but she realized that some wounds ran too deep, some prejudices were too ingrained. She feared that her decision would lead to more bloodshed, the very thing she had hoped to avoid. Thomas stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and desperation. "Sarah," he pleaded, "please come home. Don't do this. Don't throw your life away." He extended his hand towards her, but she remained rooted to the spot, her gaze fixed on Kawa. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Any wrong move could lead to disaster. Kawa stepped forward, his presence commanding respect. He addressed the settlers in broken English, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Kawa," he said. "I am leader of this tribe." He spoke of his respect for Sun Woman, acknowledging her past life and her connection to the settlers. "She was Sarah," he said, "but now she is Sun Woman. She has chosen to be with us, to share our life, to be one of us." He emphasized that Sun Woman was not being held against her will, that she was free to make her own choices. "She is a strong woman," he said. "She has a good heart. We are honored to have her with us." He spoke of his commitment to Sun Woman, promising to protect her, to cherish her, and to honor her for as long as they both shall live. He assured the settlers that he would never harm her, that he would always respect her wishes. He acknowledged the pain and anger that the settlers felt, but he pleaded with them to understand. "We are different people," he said. "We have different ways of life, but we can still respect each other. We can still find a way to live in peace." He offered a gesture of goodwill, promising to return any stolen goods that belonged to the settlers and to refrain from raiding their settlements in the future, as long as they respected the Apache's right to their land. He said that Sun Woman would be welcome to visit Harmony Gulch whenever she wished, and that he would ensure her safe passage. He looked at Thomas and nodded respectfully. Kawa's words, spoken with sincerity and respect, began to soften the hearts of some of the settlers. Thomas, though still heartbroken, recognized the truth in Kawa's words. He saw the love and respect in their eyes, and he realized that Sun Woman was truly happy. After hours of tense negotiations, a compromise was reached. Sun Woman would be allowed to live freely with Kawa and the Apache, embracing her new life and her new identity. The settlers would respect her choice and would not attempt to force her to return. In return, Sun Woman would be allowed to visit Harmony Gulch whenever she wished, to see her former friends and neighbors, and to maintain a connection with her past. Kawa promised to ensure her safe passage and to protect her from any harm. The agreement was a fragile one, but it was a start. It was a step towards understanding, tolerance, and peaceful coexistence. It was a recognition that two different cultures could find a way to live together, to respect each other's differences, and to build a better future for all. Thomas accepted the compromise, but he knew he would never forget Sarah. He would always carry a piece of her in his heart. He gave Sun Woman a sad smile and nodded his head. It was over. The settlers began to turn and walk away, heading back toward Harmony Gulch. The Apache warriors lowered their weapons, the tension slowly dissipating. Sun Woman had protected them all. She was grateful that the settlers had agreed to a compromise. She hoped it would last. As the settlers turned to leave, Sun Woman walked towards Kawa, her heart filled with love and gratitude. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with affection. Kawa smiled, a rare and beautiful sight. He gently pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. They embraced, a silent expression of their love and commitment to each other. Their embrace was more than just a gesture of affection. It was a symbol of the bridging of two worlds, a testament to the power of love and understanding to overcome cultural differences and historical conflicts. It was a beacon of hope for a future where the settlers and the Apache could live together in peace, respecting each other's values and celebrating their shared humanity. As they held each other close, they knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, prejudices to confront, and wounds to heal. But they were ready to face those challenges together, united by their love, their commitment, and their unwavering belief in the possibility of a better future. They stood together, hand in hand, watching the settlers disappear over the horizon. They were ready to begin their life together. They were finally at peace. Sun Woman and Kawa built a life together based on respect, mutual love, and a shared commitment to bridging the gap between their two worlds. They lived according to Apache traditions, respecting the land and honoring their ancestors. But Sun Woman also incorporated aspects of her settler upbringing into their lives, sharing stories of her past and teaching the Apache children about her culture. They often visited Harmony Gulch, where Sun Woman was welcomed by some, but still viewed with suspicion by others. But she never let the prejudice deter her. She believed that with time and understanding, the settlers and the Apache could learn to live together in peace. Kawa proved to be a wise and compassionate leader, always striving to protect his people while also seeking opportunities for peaceful coexistence with the settlers. He learned to speak English fluently, and he often met with the leaders of Harmony Gulch to discuss issues of mutual concern. They had children together, raising them to be proud of both their Apache and settler heritage. They taught them to respect all people, regardless of their background or beliefs. They wanted their children to be bridge builders, to help create a world where different cultures could live together in harmony. They were building a future where two worlds could be one. Their love was a testament to the power of understanding. It was a love that would last forever. It was a love that changed the world. Years later, Sun Woman sat beneath a sprawling oak tree, surrounded by a group of eager Apache children. She told them stories of her childhood in Harmony Gulch, of her life as a settler woman, and of the long journey that had led her to the Apache. She described the beauty of the prairie, the warmth of her community, and the simple pleasures of her former life. She wanted them to understand where she came from, to appreciate her history, and to see the world through her eyes. Nearby, Kawa gathered his and Sun Woman's children, teaching them about Apache traditions. He showed them how to track animals, how to hunt with a bow and arrow, and how to build a fire without matches. He told them stories of their ancestors, of their courage, their wisdom, and their deep connection to the land. He taught them the importance of respecting nature, of honoring their elders, and of protecting their people. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with fascination. They were learning about two different cultures, two different ways of life, and two different perspectives on the world. They were learning to embrace their heritage, to celebrate their differences, and to build bridges between their two worlds. As Sun Woman and Kawa watched their children learn, they knew that they had succeeded. They had created a new generation of bridge builders, a generation that would carry their message of love, understanding, and peaceful coexistence into the future. Their love story, born from conflict and adversity, had become a symbol of hope for a better world.